We are calling to order the 185th meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, back today at the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center, 3 o'clock on March 29th. Commissioner McDonald will be here shortly, so we'll put off accepting the minutes and go straight to the first item on the agenda, which is Research and Responsible Gaming, Director Van der Linden.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
So March, as you know, is National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. It seems fitting as we wind down this month to bring this specific agenda item to you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
Great. All right. So it seems fitting to bring this specific agenda item to you as we discuss a strategic plan for services to mitigate the harms associated with gambling in Massachusetts. The Expanded Gaming Act provides numerous provisions that emphasize protections to communities and mitigation of social impacts. And it's these provisions that lay the groundwork or the foundation for our path forward. It's specifically within the Expanded Gaming Act. There's the Public Health Trust Fund. And I'm going to just read the exact language of the Public Health Trust Fund because I think it's very important context as we talk about what is our authority and what is our direction to lay out a strategic plan. So the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall be the trustee of the fund and may only expend monies in the fund without further appropriation to assist social services and public health programs dedicated to addressing problems associated with compulsive gambling, including but not limited to gambling prevention and addiction services, substance abuse services, educational campaigns to mitigate the potential addictive nature of gambling, and any studies and evaluations necessary, including the annual research agenda under Section 71, to ensure the proper and most effective strategies. This is a pretty broad direction for us to lay out a public health approach to mitigating problem gambling.
Mark, just to clarify, you might want to mention the MOU that the Secretary, are you getting to that?
I am.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly. This is a big task, and fortunately, also within the statute. I'm not sure where I'm. Well, I will just move on.
Well, is it not moving? Is there's, who's responsible for this, for the clicker?
I have the clicker, but it's...
There you go.
Oh, there it is. It is ample funding to fulfill this. So there are, for the Public Health Trust Fund, there are two sources of funding for it. The first is an annual assessment to our gaming licensees. And you'll see that is annual fees of not less than $5 million, proportional shares to each of the gaming licensees. The second is 5% of the gross gaming revenue received by MGC from Category 1 licensees. Now, obviously, we don't have Category 1 licensees operating right now, so the 5% will be delayed for some period, which I think is an important point, and I think is something that is addressed within the strategic plan, that when we get to it, we'll talk about that. So an interesting piece of this is that, as you can see from the Public Health Trust Fund language, it's the Secretary of Health and Human Services that's the trustee of the Public Health Trust Fund. However, if you dive into Section 71, which is the research agenda, it assigns the authority to the Gaming Commission. Now, you really want to have your research inform your programs and services. And so I think in light of that, Chairman Crosby, you and the Secretary of Health and Human Services at the time created an MOU that aligned the efforts and basically granted equal authority to the MGC and EOHHS to set the overall budget and protocols for expenditures from the Public Health Trust Fund. that would provide programs and services to treat and prevent problem gambling and assure that the research is used to investigate the impacts. So one needs to inform the other. If we were functioning separately, we would lose some of the efficiencies we would have if we were working more closely together. And that's the essence of the MOU between the Massachusetts Gaming Commission and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. So, all right, so from a public health perspective, we have a directive to address problem gambling from a public health perspective. It's laid out clearly within the Public Health Trust Fund language. And quite honestly, I've been working in this field for 10 years. I think a public health approach is the right direction forward. There's so much to be learned from in this field. There's very little evidence that we could draw upon. But what we know is that this specific issue is best addressed from a public health perspective. With that, you'll get the most powerful impacts and the most effective method. We also want to recognize that from a public health perspective, we need to create a safety net. Individuals that we can't reach through prevention services, we need to make sure that there are treatment services that are available out there for them. And again, I think that public health perspective and the strategic plan that you have before you today does a good job of trying to marry those two and understand it on a continuum. So now pivoting over to the strategic plan itself. We are in an MOU or an ISA with the Department of Public Health. Within that ISA, there was funding specifically for a strategic plan to be developed, and that is done by Emily Bargov, who I will introduce here in just a moment. And it is led by Victor Ortiz, who I'll also just introduce here in just a second. This was an intensive effort over the course of about 18 months. The information that they gathered leading to it came from many different perspectives. They did a review of articles related to best practices. They did more than 200 stakeholder interviews, including people working in the prevention of problem gambling field, clinicians who treat problem gambling, clinicians who work in other addiction fields. It includes members of communities that host and surrounding communities. It included researchers from different institutions. It included representatives from our gaming licensees. And it even included legislature. It also takes into consideration, which I think is very important and instrumental, it takes into consideration our research, the SIGMA research. And you'll see that the SIGMA data from baseline data is woven throughout this. And as you know, that's baseline data. It becomes more powerful over time. And that data will become more powerful and informative for this strategic plan and future iterations. So I'm going to now turn it over. I feel bad. I want to introduce my guests here. I meant to do that from the onset. I'm very pleased to announce that DPH has a new director of problem gambling services, and that is Victor Ortiz. I've worked with Victor for a number of years now, I would say is safe to say. Victor has worked in the field of problem gambling for a long time. He's a social worker. He brings an amazing amount of passion, commitment, and energy to the field, and I think is an ideal person to work and spearhead this from DPH and work in close collaboration with us at the Commission. To his right is Emily Bargov, who is working with EDC. She was the pin behind this this strategic plan. There were others, but Emily did a phenommenal job, I think, of pulling together the data, taking taking a model that has been used in public health and translating that for problem gambling, this problem gambling services plan. So with that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Victor Ortiz.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here today. The Public Health Trust Fund Strategic Plan presents a great opportunity in the development of a comprehensive plan for the services to mitigate the harms associated with gambling. The task of developing a strategic plan, as Mark talked about, was not a simple task. Our field of problem gambling is a young field. From its early beginning in 1972, when Dr. Custer first coined the term compulsive gambling, to the first appearance of the term pathological gambling in the APA DSM-3 in 1980, we've had many, many questions in developing answers. Gambling studies have predominantly focused on the individualized characteristics of problem gamblers. Then in 2002, the Annual Review of Public Health published Gambling and Related Mental Health Disorders, a Public Health Analysis by Drs. David Korn and Dr. Howard Schaefer. This landmark study was the first of its kind that analyzed gambling from a public health perspective. And according to research, one benefit of this view that it promotes consideration of health-related phenomenons at a macro level that might not be available using more individually oriented research approaches. The complexity of problem gambling creates the opportunity to examine this issue from multiple lenses in order to promote the highest level of health. And according to research, a public health approach to gambling encourages examination of the social risk and protective factors that encourages or discourages the transition from recreational to problem-related gambling, the identification of vulnerable demographics, groups, or ethnic differences, and the acceptance of gambling. The Department of Public Health is committed to the optimal health and well-being of all people in Massachusetts. Essential to our work is working in partnerships and collaboration. And at this time, I just want to say thank you to the Mass Gaming Commission, in particular, Chairman Crosby and Commissioner Zuniga, for your work and our partnership in this effort to get to this stage in the strategic plan. And thank you to EDC. Our collective efforts, I have no doubt, will develop the services to mitigate the harms associated with gambling, and the strategic plan would inform my annual work plan as Director of Problem Gambling Services for the Department of Public Health. I look forward and I'm excited about the challenges and the opportunities ahead. Thank you.
Victor, why don't you just mention the other members of the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee? Are we going to do that too?
I would be glad to do that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tell me to shut
So
up if you
the
want.
Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee is chaired by the chairman of the Gaming Commission. It's also co-chaired by the Secretary of Health and Human Services or that person's designee, and that designee is Associate Commissioner of the Department of Public Health, Lindsay Tucker, who's got relatively new, but has brought an amazing energy to the group. We also have 3 additional members that were appointed by the 2 chairs. Those include the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Lottery, Michael Sweeney. It includes the Executive Director of the Mass Public Health Association, Rebecca Gerwitz, and Undersecretary of Public Safety, Jennifer Quealy.
So this time it's going to turn it over to Emily, who's going to provide the slides here.
May I have the clicker? Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'd like to introduce Jack Vondras, who just joined me, also from EDC.
Traffic.
So my role today is really just to provide a short overview of the contents of the plan. It is an 86-page document, so we will not go into excruciating detail. But I will start by saying that the purpose of the plan is to articulate strategies and activities that will best utilize the funds that will be made available through the Public Health Trust Fund, specifically for services. And the framework that we used in developing the strategic plan was actually SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration's strategic prevention framework. So that the framework is not specific to prevention, but it does have a focus there. And it allowed us to begin with an assessment, to build on that assessment, to think about implementation, capacity building, and do some really solid planning that included planning for evaluation, sustainability, and cultural competence. So you will see all of those pieces reflected in the contents of the draft plan. Now, Mark alluded to this a few minutes ago, as did Victor, but the plan is structured in such a way that it includes content, both current services and recommendations for future services, spanning the full continuum of care. And what we mean by that is reflected in the graphic that you can see on the slide. It means that we include prevention and health promotion for people who are currently healthy and for populations that are currently healthy through screening and referral, treatment services, and recovery support for those who need it. And you can see at the base of this graphic, there's infrastructure and capacity building and also data collection. Those are the two pieces that will be necessary to provide the other services, necessary to make the other pieces happen. The plan itself has a number of sections, or the document has a number of sections. First, we provide legislative context and other background that you'll need to understand what's being recommended. We've included a description of our methodology and the process used to develop the strategic plan. We provide an overview of current services. We found this extremely important to look carefully at what exists now and to be able to identify those elements of current services that can be expanded on, can be enhanced, and can be maintained. We provide a list of priority areas that I'll show you in a moment that were identified through the assessment process. The strategic plan itself is strategies and activities across the continuum of services, as I mentioned, moving from prevention all the way through recovery support. And the document also includes process evaluation and outcome evaluation plans. So the priority areas that emerged from the assessment process are listed here, and they are in order of the prevention continuum right now. So they are not in order of priority, they are in order beginning with prevention, moving through recovery support and infrastructure development. So we have prevention for youth, prevention for other high-risk populations, a focus on community-level interventions. That refers to the public health approach that Victor and Mark both mentioned. Coordination of problem gambling services, coordination between problem gambling services, integration of addiction services, mental health services, and primary care, decrease in the stigma and unsupportive social norms regarding gambling, increase in availability of support services, an increase in availability of culturally appropriate services, contribution to the evidence base for problem gambling services, and that is a reference to the fact that this is an emerging field and there's more to be learned. Establishment of an evaluation infrastructure to monitor and evaluate the impacts of the work as it moves forward, and expansion of institutional capacity to address problem gambling and related issues. So finally, I will share with you the fact that in the strategic plan, within the strategic plan document, you'll notice that there are 2 phases of activities that are included. Phase 1 activities are those that could be carried out realistically in the coming years. So over the next year or 2 before there are dollars available in the Public Health Trust Fund for services. The Phase 1 activities focus primarily on infrastructure and capacity building to set the stage for the addition of dollars, but also for the potential for increased need for services that will come with the opening of casinos. So Phase 2 activities are included because they reflect potential expansion of the strategies that could be done when dollars become available. They give a sense of the path forward on a number of the strategies. That is all I have to say right now, but we are happy to take questions about the current draft of the plan.
Anybody?
If I may, I was going to ask Victor to kind of go through the timeline of events moving forward. And
Okay, let me just, before you do that, I just want to mention one thing about the Phase 1. You said Phase 1 is designed for the period prior to there being monies in the Public Health Trust Fund. That is accurate, but not causal. Phase 1 is previous to there being the launch of the casinos, which happens to be the same time the money will start coming into the Public Health Trust Fund. But we aren't going to have, until 2018, we aren't going to have any appreciable increase in gaming other than the modest, very modest impact of Plainville. So it's not like we're holding back services because we don't have the money. We're holding back services, we don't have the problem yet. So we got to get ready. And just to be clear, and I think I've said this before for you guys, if there is a need to spend money, then we'll figure out a way to deal with that. So the issue is to get ready for what might happen when these things launch at whatever the appropriate cost is.
Thank you for the clarification. That's right. Yeah.
So I'm going to review the timeline really quickly. So currently, right now at the stage, we drew up a timeline in regards to getting this document approved. So currently, right now, the plan is sitting at the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, at the Secretary's office for review of their office. We will conduct that review up to April 6th. At April 6th, we then will redistribute the plan with any adjustments or whatever the case might be to the Executive Committee of the Public Health Trust Fund in line for April 11th, which then will be the day for the vote by the Executive Committee of the Public Health Trust Fund to approve the document.
Okay?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
yeah,
questions?
Question. I'm looking at the continuum of services. So I know this is the plan moving forward. Where would you say the most need exists, or what we're not able to do presently? And, if I'm looking at these 4 categories, or infrastructure or data collection, what is an area in which this plan will really have the most effect because you're just not able to do it now?
I would say, Commissioner Cameron, that I think that one of the priority areas right now is really two-front, right? I think that one is prevention is key. I mean, the way prevention works, the way it's structured, I mean, we have to get to the ground right now, the planning and development of prevention. We already have a slot parlor that's already opened in Southeast Mass, and we have some data, obviously, from the Sigma data that we already have. So I think developing prevention strategies is really key for the planning and development of that itself. I also would say that for us as well, it's important on the treatment side to begin to analyze our current treatment structure in Massachusetts, where the gaps are, where do we need to sort of fill in those gaps, and and also the data collection portion is really important as well. So I think those two fronts are really two critical fronts for us, sort of moving forward right now.
My 2 cents worth on that. I would have said those 2 things too, Commissioner. But there's also another massive issue which is not unique to us, but which is one we're going to have to deal with, which is the incredible disconnect between the prevalence of problem gambling and the request or access to treatment. It's true of most addictions, but in gambling, it's really, just drops off like a cliff. It's very, very hard to identify, and then it's very, very hard to figure out how you move people from having self-identified into help. So, whether we can add appreciably to that or not, I don't know. But it's certainly something that, I feel strongly is a priority that we want to try to really work on.
I agree.
And we are thinking about it. We're talking about, our Game Sense advisors, can they play some kind of a gateway role? Is there a people on the helpline that come into the Mass Council? Can we upgrade that to be a little bit more of a gateway to treatment? We're already starting to think about it, but it's a really important and interesting challenge.
Follow-up question. What I don't see here is the analysis, which is critical, and maybe it's built into all of these pieces, you know, what's working, what's not, where are the gaps? You know, that analysis, I think, is critical to making sure you're successful with these efforts. Is that built in everywhere, or?
So as far as the structure of the document, there's a section, there are 3 portions of the plan that move through the continuum of services. First is current services, and then the next is, maybe I'm mixing this up, but let me back up and say there's a section of the plan that describes in detail each of the priority areas that I listed, and for each one does that analysis. So talks about what is currently in place, what's missing, and what we heard during the assessment in terms of what the needs are. So the suggested activities and strategies are designed to directly respond to those analyses.
And I think that that's one of the strengths of the model that was chosen, using the SAMHSA model, that it includes an evaluation and a cycle back to evaluate what is being done, to see where you need to adjust services or resources.
I think that's a piece that is missing in so many programs. You know, what's working, what's not, how do you tweak it as you go along? So.
And in response to that piece, I mentioned there's a process evaluation plan included, as well as an impact evaluation plan, an outcome evaluation. So that is intended to provide indicators for monitoring the activities and looking at whether the impacts are actually being achieved. So that should provide a feedback loop to see what needs to be changed over time.
Yeah. And our entire research agenda, quite honestly, is a method of getting additional information to provide a loop for evaluation of how to adjust our services and where we need to go.
But I think Commissioner Cameron's question is so important that there is a very powerful answer, because the evaluation loop is deeply integrated into all of our work. But it's important enough, you didn't mention it, so Commissioner Cameron didn't know for sure if it was there. And even in a very high-level presentation like you just now made, that loop should be in there, because it's absolutely core and critical.
You know, I was just going to mention something that's relevant now. I think the team was perhaps a little modest in the interest of time, but this process started in October of last year and went through a number of iterations. I was just rereading these recently for this meeting, but I've read the versions that came about, you know, and I don't know how many versions, but there were many.
Quite a few.
Quite a few since October as they evolved. I attended those meetings. Although I'm not a member of the Public Health Trust Fund Executive Committee, I attend them in interest, and the evolution since October in all those meetings, in the versions, incorporating, you know, an EDC and DPH and Mark and everybody being very flexible to incorporate new data that happened along the way. The baseline study came about with that time frame, and there was a lot of input from that effort that informed a lot of what transpires here. The team really went to great efforts to understand all the activities that are taking place here in parallel and are converging as all of this is coming to fruition. And I think that the document really captures all of that really well. And you know, your presentation has to be brief by necessity, but you know, just to offer a slightly different perspective to the prior two comments, there's been a lot of thought and a lot of really good deliberation that has occurred in this effort, and I think it's a great testament, and it's all in here. It's just easy to miss in a very small, brief presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The SIGMA team, Rachel Volberg, Amanda Haupt, were also very, very important in this process, and I think met with Emily and her team numerous times. They wrote a white paper that specifically provided recommendations based on the SIGMA data moving forward, and I think those are all, it's important relationships that came to the document that you have.
And let me mention one more thing. There were enough versions in this that I remember a couple of conclusions to many of these conversations, which was the natural conclusion. This is a living and breathing document. This is a process that only begins, and it felt at times that it was already on, living and breathing as we were.
It was breathing heavily.
Breathing heavily as we were in the next iteration. But I think that's a testament to how important it is to think of the natural evolution that this effort takes place, and that strategic planning is more of a cultural, ingrained in everything we do, including the evaluation process that we have and the research that is going to inform programs and so on. And there's that loop that we really do in everything we want to do that has been very much a part of this already.
I would just like to add first of all, congratulations to the team and the work you've put into this. It's a very thorough document. I had 2 points, and I shared them a little bit earlier today with Mark. One is in your target area, prevention of high-risk populations, and even though you list several of those, the one that stood out for me that I thought might be missing, and I think it's backed up somewhat by Dr. Volberg's research, was the veteran population. Maybe not huge in terms of numbers, but for that segment, maybe a higher prevalence of potential problem gambling or being at risk. Now, you may find veterans kind of locked into your other categories, and I hope you'll kind of cull through that information as the plan gets implemented, but I would just draw your attention to maybe refocus or relook at that group. The other question I had was, right before we opened Plainville, we did a kind of a problem gambling strategy approach to minimize the impact of the opening of Plain Ridge Park. And as I think back to it, maybe that plan was at the 30,000 foot. The strategic plan is really trying to put some more meat onto what resources are needed. I hope, if time allows, there's the ability to kind of come back and align the strategic plan with that kind of regional local plan, because I expect we'll be laying out a local plan for the area around MGM when it opens, and also with Everett when it opens, and potentially down in Region C as well. So good work. It's just nice to kind of see it tie back into some of the local strategies that all of you worked so hard on prior to the opening of Plain Ridge. But
Commissioner Stebbins, I just want to thank you first for mentioning the point on veterans. It is a priority for us. It's definitely, there is enough evidence there to tell us quite a bit in regards to veterans, in regards to suicidal issues, to issues around depression, around anxiety, and other issues that are very well documented in research. Just yesterday, I just had a meeting with the coordinator of Veteran Services at the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services to talk about these issues and those concerns. It's definitely a priority for us in this plan as well, to focus on veterans.
May I specify?
Yeah.
So just as far as the plan document itself and its reference to veterans, if you look, there are a number of priority populations listed that are bulleted, and a few paragraphs later there are a few other populations mentioned that various stakeholders didn't feel there was sufficient academic research evidence to support including as priority populations, but that have been pointed to either by the research or by other concerned parties. And so it is listed there with good reason. We will be looking at that. And the other way to think about reaching that population through the strategies that are laid out is through looking at common comorbidities. So we know that there has been research to indicate that rates are higher of depression, anxiety, sometimes substance use in veteran populations, and there will absolutely be efforts to coordinate screening and referrals for those groups.
and as we've talked about is in this body's work, is that the infrastructure of support for veterans, be it, you know, VSOs at the local level. I mean, we had a letter from a VSO coming in because they thought a veteran in their community was taking his check and going to Plain Ridge and cashing it, which we quickly debunked that myth for them. But again, there's that infrastructure that's there that is in constant contact with veterans and is certainly a great resource in terms of being able to direct people to the appropriate resources.
Mark, would you like to take the question about the interim plan?
Sure. Commissioner Stebbins, you also mentioned the interim plan that was specific to the Plainville area. And you know, that plan was really more of a mapping of an organizing of existing services, recognizing that there wasn't any new services that would be there at that point in time. And so that the intention of that was to just really kind of get a lay of the land. This is really intended to provide us with the direction forward.
It's great. I appreciate the work.
Yeah, great work. This looks terrific.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I see the chairman has stepped out. I think you have a quorum, and you could go on to either approval of the minutes or the approval of racing officials.
The chair asked me to be deputized for purposes of the minutes, and in that capacity, I would move, unless there's discussion with regard to the minutes of the meetings of March 15th and to March 17th. As to the minutes of the March 15th, 2016 public meeting of the commission, I would move for its approval, subject to any corrections, typographical errors, or other non-material matters.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes of the March 15th meeting are approved. Similarly, with regard to the minutes of the March 17th, 2016 open meeting of the commission, I would move for their approval, again, subject to corrections, typographical errors, or other non-material matters.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just let the record show that I'll be abstaining. I was absent from that meeting, Commissioner.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
One abstention.
One abstention.
Commissioners, I would suggest that we move on to item 5, approval of racing officials at this time, and then I can give my administrative update when Chairman Crosby returns.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
So in front of you, you have a request from Steve O'Toole, Director of Racing for Plain Ridge Park Casino, for approval of the key operating officials and racing officials. These people have all been licensed with us in the past. We are currently in the licensing process and doing the background checks on them and fingerprinting. So my recommendation is that the commission approve these people on this list with the condition that there's a satisfactory completion of their licensing and background checks by the state police. If you have any questions.
Doctor, any new faces on this list?
No new faces. Edwin Harrop is being the track superintendent now, which is a step up for him.
And just also for the record, the first group of personnel are Plain Ridge Park personnel, right? Steve O'Toole, Mr. Calderon, Savastano, Chester Pionkowski, and Christine Lynch.
Mm-hmm. Those are the operating
Those
officials.
are the operating officials?
Yes.
And then the rest of them are
Racing officials.
racing officials,
Yes.
Gaming Commission employees.
Well, they're all employees of Plain Ridge Park Casino.
Okay.
Some of them are in the administrative area and others are in the racing area,
Okay.
basically.
So I move that we accept the recommendation and approve these racing officials for Plain Ridge Park.
I second that.
Pending completion of their.
Yeah, pending
license.
completion of their
Oh,
background
yeah,
check.
pending
and
completion,
probation.
just as outlined.
Second.
All right. I did second that, and I'll ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you, Director.
Just in time.
April 11th.
Chairman Crosby, I believe the last matter is administrative update by me, so if you're ready, I will proceed.
I am.
Okay.
We are. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Crosby, members of the commission. I'm here today to give you one update and raise one new topic. You will see under administration item 4A, there is an item called LMS update. For those who do not know what LMS is, it is an acronym for Licensing Management System. The Licensing Management System will be our software program that we anticipate will help us accept, process, and approve online the bulk of our upcoming applicants for employees working at casinos. I'm going to give you a brief update today because we are in the midst of contract negotiations on this, and hopefully we can give you a more substantive update soon thereafter. We put our needs out to bid and believe we have a successful bidder. We are currently, as I said, in negotiation process and hope to have a signed contract by the end of the week. We are encouraged by this process that this will be a successful project because we engaged what's called a proof of concept before with the bidder, in which we had some back and forth on what our actual needs are. And we are confident that this bidder understands what our needs are, and we understand what their capabilities are. Very importantly, we believe this phase of the project will be within our current budget proposal. Once our contract is signed, I would like to come back to you with a few of the directors who are more intimately involved, and we give you a more substantive update both on the process and the timing of the LMS project, if that's acceptable to you.
And one way or the other, the functionality of it, which is the real issue. You know, I don't know whether we can demonstrate it here. I mean, I think other people might be interested in it too, but, or whether we have to do it at the office on 2x or whatever, but I think all of us would be interested in seeing the functionality.
We will, and I think what would first benefit you is just a description. There's no functionality yet, but a description of the functionality, and as it develops, we can keep each individual commissioner updated.
Okay.
All right?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great update. I actually, I benefited from being part of the group that was involved in this proof of concept. I was just curious to the functionality. I became a bit of a, what's called a dummy user, I suppose. And
we call it geek.
Yeah. And I was very encouraged by the approach, this agile methodology of developing and testing and getting something in return. It's really a project management tool, but that's clearly appropriate for this kind of effort. And I'm really encouraged by that method. What I observed from that process, then there's a lot of great challenges and everything, but a lot of upside to that method.
Yeah, I would follow up on that comment and say that this will be a very important project for us and will require staff attention and staff dedication to work in partnership, hopefully with the successful bidder, to get this done on time. And I believe we have staff buy-in, and staff is totally on board with this. Great.
Excellent.
Thank you. So
Thank
I'm
you.
going to lead to the item 4B, which is social gaming background public education. Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this item was put on our agenda really as a result of the confluence of a couple events that happened recently. First, the parent company of one of our licensees, Penn National, contacted and visited us about their potential use of social gaming. And at the same time, local press raised the issue about propriety of social gaming as it relates to one of our current active licensees. Based on these two events, it seems appropriate for the commission to be more educated about social gaming as it intercepts with land-based gaming. And there are, I'm just thinking out loud, a couple of issues that arise. The first is, what, if any, jurisdiction does a gaming regulator have over social gaming as it relates to a brick-and-mortar licensee? And secondly, what, if any, are the implications for social gaming as it may relate to problem gaming? And we've actually asked Director Vanderwinder to start to look into that issue. I could suggest a number of options going forward, and I know the commission before my time had some experience on educating themselves on this new technology. One of the options would be to invite our licensees to come and present on what, if any, views they have on this. Second, obviously, would be, and these are not exclusive, they could be all together, to identify industry experts and ask them also to come in and present to the commission. And we would think about whether, again, there are any consumer protection issues, and ask Director Vanderwinder to see if there are any solid research and data on the implications of social gaming on problem gaming. So I raise that issue, and I would say this in terms of timing. If the commission wanted to pursue this, I would suggest we have a very robust April. This might be something appropriate for May, but I just wanted to raise that issue for your concern.
I think both of those suggestions would be appropriate to not only hear from licensees, but also from industry experts. I think information, we always make better decisions when we have timely, accurate information, so I think both of those would be appropriate.
I would agree with that. We obviously have a growing industry cluster of kind of skill-based but free game makers in Massachusetts. Is also the Game Show Network is located 1 block away from our office, and in my visits with them in the past, they've been more than willing to offer up their time to come over and talk about social gaming.
Yeah, I agree as well. I wonder, though, if given time frame, which is important, you're right that we have a very busy April in front of us. It's also just easier to start with our licensees, however early, because they, may have. It may be very efficient to just come before us, and either shortly after or after having had initial discussions, we could think about something that is going to take us longer to put together anyway. If we're talking about a educational forum like we've done in the past with people from outside or whatever that may be. So I would ask that we consider talking to our licensees first, and then follow up accordingly.
I would defer to your experience on it, whether an incremental approach would be preferable to sort of trying to put it all in one
Under one.
presentation.
Were we talking about a forum? I thought we were talking about possibly having them here at a public meeting to present information.
Again, it could be, I defer, we could certainly do it in a public meeting setting, and I know you, as I said, you've had experience in other settings also.
I guess that's what I assumed when we mentioned experience before.
And I assumed they would
Yes.
come in, it wouldn't be
Like
as...
any other meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
And just present the information, which probably wouldn't be timely. Rather, it wouldn't take a lot of time to put something together. Just
In that case, I think both could be very well put together, at the same time. I imagine that an all-day educational type forum, which takes us longer to put together, that's all. But if that's not what we're talking about, then, let's do it
Well,
together.
there are hybrids too. I think this is a little bit of a tricky issue because we're using the term social gaming, and first of all, hardly anybody knows exactly what it is. And its relevance to us, if there is any at all, is only that which is done with casino games, facsimile games done on a social gaming economic model. And I don't know that we have any authority even over that, but you could certainly, you could consider that. But even our not licensees, but other subsidiaries of our licensees have a full range of social gaming, not just casino related. So, and the rest of social gaming, even though we did discuss this, as everybody knows, in our DFS report, and this was one of the things that we recommended that the legislature take into their consideration if they think about an overall omnibus approach to online gaming. At the moment, the rest of social gaming, which is the vast majority of social gaming, is outside our ambit, as was DFS, but we were sort of asked to take some looks at it. So I'm mixed on this, but I kind of think everybody, including me, but even us, would be well served by starting out with a little bit of a broader education on what is social gaming. So we really know for sure what we're talking about and what the range of stuff is out there. Then, and that doesn't, I don't mean a full-blown day-long forum, but you could still have you could have a person or two, whatever, come in and talk to us at a public meeting about sort of the phenomenon of social gaming, what it means, what are its economic models, what are its long-term strategies, and then as a subset of that, have our licensees talk about their forays into social gaming, particularly their forays into social gaming which have a casino-like manifestation, and then see where we go from there. So, I'd sort of have a hybrid. I'd say, let's make it a regular meeting, so it's not a huge, but let's start out with an overview of social gaming for a broad informational. We're not suggesting to anybody that the broad social gaming is our job. It isn't. But just so we and the public begin to learn what this is, and then focus in, probably at that same meeting, but maybe the next meeting, on where our licensees are on this. Okay, does that make sense?
I like that approach.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
I think with that direction, I can have staff work on trying to put together what that presentation or presentations would look like, and I can come back to you, Mr. Chairman, and we can talk about scheduling.
Okay. And the agenda too. I mean, we'll
Correct.
think about that agenda.
Yes, correct.
I think everybody would want to look at that.
Correct.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of the informational sessions that are described. And whether or not that it falls directly within our jurisdiction, there is at least one aspect of social gaming that potentially falls, if not within our quote jurisdiction, close quote, within our area of concern, and that is its overlay with the problem gambling issues. And at the meeting with the Penn National people that I attended, the strongest objection which they took to the article that had appeared, I think that very day in the Boston Globe, was the very strong suggestion that the social gaming games were set up in a way to lure people into active gaming, and deceptively was the suggestion of the article, because the winning percentages of the games that Penn was proposing to implement were actually greater than the actual games, the slot machines and other things that are employed at the casino. The suggestion being that people get excited about how much they're going to be winning when they're playing the social games. There's no actual win there, but it primes them for wanting to get out and make money by going to the casino, and then find themselves playing games with machines that in fact do not operate the way that the social games do. Now, Penn, and this is very, very important, the Penn people categorically contradicted that point from that had been made in the article, and said that their games are identical, that the games align perfectly with the machines that are in place in the casino. But
Well,
I think
what's the relevance of that to the discussion about how we're going to handle this going forward? Or are you just saying that might...
I said, number one, I'm in favor of our learning more about it. I was addressing I was addressing in those comments the question of whether this is really outside of our jurisdiction. I
Okay.
think that it actually is. I mean, if we were to find that, people were being lured into the casinos in part by being misled as to what their real chances of winning are, I think that's that's something which is, ought to be of a concern to us, if for no other reason than it's a tie-in to the problem gaming mandate that we have under the statute.
Okay.
That is the end of my administrative update, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I think we've done all the other items.
Anything else? We got-
Move to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. It's now 4. We will be back at 5.
Correct.